música de Brasília. There in the material, we are using this study as published by Segovia, including its numbering. But the correct opus number will be here on the description of the video, and also if you check also on the screen, and you can check on the description for its correct name and more info. It's interesting to notice that these studies were published by Segovia later, and probably not from Segovia sources, but from Coste. Napoleon Coste was a study of Sor himself, and there are some editions with notes. We are not sure exactly if all notes are by Sor or if all notes are by Coste. Probably there are notes from both, but there are some notations that are in Sor's publication that are different from Coste's notes. And we notice that Segovia publication is more faithful to the Coste's edition, so to speak. It was not a published edition, as far as I know. That's why it's different in many ways from the original source. If you check the original source in an Urtext edition, probably you will notice several differences from its publication, but I'm not here to question our original text. Let's use the material as we apply in our lessons at the Escola de Música de Brasília. You can get access to that material, or at least info on how to do so, on the description of this video. Okay, I have to start that some people use this study to study rest stroke, and this is quite interesting, paradoxical in some way, because Sor did not play rest stroke. Rest stroke was invented by Tárrega. Sor was long gone when Tárrega created the rest stroke. More than that, Sor right hand technique was created with a legacy of the lute right hand technique. The lute, for many times, it used the chiquito, the little finger, placed on the soundboard, and because of that, using the A finger was quite tricky. So very often lutenists played with P, I, and M, and very little with A. They did play with A, but mainly P, M, I, and that is how Sor played. And check that this study can be played with P, I, and M. It's a little hard, that's true, but imagine that you are a virtuoso guitarist, respected throughout the world, and your right hand technique is mainly playing with P, I, and M. And there is a study that you yourself composed that can be played with P, I, and M. I believe that Sor could have played it only with P, I, and M. No A at all. Or at least just very few notes with the A. That makes even more paradoxical to use that piece as a rest stroke. But okay, it can be done now. You're not forbidden. I'm not going to arrest you. Nobody will knock your door if you play that piece in rest stroke. But I've told that because that work is so much more about much more interesting stuff. And the rest stroke, the free stroke, is not really what this music is about. So let's focus on what really matters. First, I have to tell you, I'll try to make this story as short as possible, but it's a story I have to tell you first. If you see any dystopian movie or series like The Walking Dead or Mad Max, you will see there that the society collapsed and they're back into some sort of feudal or clan kind of organization. There was once in Western society that something like that happened. It was the fall of the Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire fell, because the Roman society was organized as a patriarchate, so there was a patriarch in Rome that he was the one negotiating and accomplishing posts, positions, real estate, money, fame, whatever, for its member of its clan or family. And because everybody knew clearly that their position, their real estate, their assets, they are not theirs. They are a gift from the patriarch. If the patriarch falls, you have to go there. You have to protect your patriarch, or at least the next one. So, when Rome was invaded, people from all over the Roman Empire just fled to Rome to protect their family. And little by little, it led to a depopulation of Romans in several parts of the Roman Empire. And in the north of Africa or in the Eastern European part of the Roman Empire, there were neighboring empires that already wanted to conquer that land, but the Romans didn't allow to. Since the Romans were not there anymore, they could conquer that territory and very soon got in touch with their legacy, their culture, their laws, their organization. But in the Western European, the Romans left and nobody replaced them. The Romans were the equivalent of the law system. And when the Romans fled, nobody was responsible for law. Romans were also responsible for the monopoly of force, so which means something like the military and the police at the same time. When the Romans fled, nobody was responsible for that. Even when you think of governing a society, which means making bridges, repairing roads, and stuff like that, when the Romans fled, of course, there were local people that did some of the job, but there were no locals really looking at the big picture and being the main responsibles for governing their society. So their society collapsed. And because of this collapse, Europe lost track and contact with the Roman and the Greek culture, society, and organization. It took many centuries for European societies become once more complex societies, which means societies which someone can have just one job and with this one job get enough money to buy goods and services that they are required to make a living, including goods that were produced hundreds of kilometers away but could reach that person. And when Europe became a complex society once more, little by little, they got in touch with knowledge of and information of how things were in the Roman Empire in the Greek days. And for every bit of information they got, they made a new cultural movement. The Renaissance was the very first one based on that. And the Baroque was also based on new information that reached Europeans on how things were in the Roman days, in the Greek days. And there was one information that is very important for us, that Europeans learned that back then, in the Greek times, there was something called theater. Europeans didn't know what theater was, at least not the theater as Greek did. They made some scenes and they were performing arts, but in Greek theater, there are characters that, for example, they began the story as a baby that needs to be protected from his father. And later he becomes the king of the gods of the Olympus. There's nothing similar to that on European society back then. Jesus Christ, for example, a very common character on performing arts back then, he was born Jesus Christ. At age 12, he was teaching the wise men. So there's nothing like that in European culture. And there is one more difference. The Greek theater was sung. So the Renaissance composers had to invent, to create, to make a new way to make music that could allow to represent in music the good and the bad. And that's how the tonal system was created. The tonal system was not a natural evolution of music making in different societies. It was a deliberated creation from a very special group of a very few musicians, the Camerata Fiorentina. And that creation was made to allow to recreate the Greek theater. And remember, they want to tell stories. They want to have a musical language for the good, for the hero, and a musical language for the bad, for the evil, for the villain. And in all stories, the hero always must win. In all stories, the greatness of the hero is given not by the hero itself, but by the greatness of the villain, of the rival, of the enemy. A young man that hits an old man with no leg, drunk, is just a coward. But a young man that hits a giant, full armed, with sword and shield, wow, that's a hero. And so when you're playing tonal music, you have to enhance the villain, the tension, the dominant, because that's what will create the greatness of your hero. So let's go back to the music. It's in C major. C major is the tonic. Tonic is the relief. So it's calm, it's soft. And we start in the C major and the tonic. Then we go to the dominant. It's the tension, the villain, the evil. Then we release it to the tonic, back. We're going back to the relief. But there is something very interesting going on when we achieve the C major on the fourth measure. On the melody, we start with a note that's not part of C major. C major are C, E, and G. And it begins with a D. D is not C, D is not E, D is not G. How come? It's an harmonic appoggiatura. You must have heard the term appoggiatura before as something like that. A very fast note, just a little bit higher or a little bit lower than a principal note that you want to embellish. Unfortunately, it's the same term, but it's a very different context. That's a harmonic appoggiatura. It's not created by being fast and higher or lower than another note. It's given by its relationship to the harmony. The D is therefore a note that's not part of a chord, a dissonance to the chord that goes from a low to a lower note, that this lower note is part of the chord. It must be a neighbor note. So the D goes to a C, and C is part of C major. Every time that you see a harmonic appoggiatura, you have to stress the tension, play it legato, and the second note should be a little softer. Then it can be legato, staccato, whatever, it's not important. But the first note, the tension, must be legato and must be stronger. That's how you should play it, okay? Then we keep going. Tonic, tonica, dominant. Tonic once more, dominant. Then we're back to that. Tonic, tonica, dominant. Tonic with appoggiatura. Tonic, tonic, dominant, tonic, dominant, dominant, tonic, but with appoggiatura, dominant. This is still a dominant. Then it goes to a tonic. One important thing about fingering, there are some people making fingerings out there which you make some spider there and you can sustain all notes. I don't think that's really necessary. You can, because especially this middle voice should be soft and discreet. So you can just play it as soft and clean as possible, or you can even use a slur on the last two notes. Sorry, I was trying to exaggerate a bit. Tonic, dominant, tonic with appoggiatura, dominant, tonic, dominant, but this is a very special dominant. This is a moment in the music that, according to the form, it's called a cadenza or cadenza. You must have heard this term before as a collection of chords, a succession of chords, a common chord pattern, but this is cadenza or cadence or cadence being called in a different context. I'm talking about musical form. So the cadenza in musical form is something that is just, it's a moment where the music is gets a moment of suspense on the dominant or any other chord of tension just before you go back to the first theme on the tonic. And cadenzas in musical form are a section which interpreters are welcomed to improvise. So here you can create different melodies. set up right now in the moment. Not a very most beautiful cadenza, but you can create your own, write it down. It's very important that when you improvise your cadenza, you must respect the harmony. If you want to make a long cadenza, which I don't recommend for such a short study, one-page study, but if you want to, you can change chords, but remember, the first and the last chord must be the very same one, which is the G major 7th, the dominant. Then we're back to the tonic, then a very interesting chord. Wow, lots of things going on. There is 9th, 7th, but this is a dominant of the relative tonic. The relative tonic goes just after, with the A minor, but with appoggiatura first. Appoggiatura, A minor. Then we have a dominant of the relative subdominant. Then the relative subdominant. First with appoggiatura, then the D minor, the relative subdominant, then dominant with 4th and 6th, then to the dominant and tonic. Some people may think that this is in fact a C major chord with an inversion. In other contexts that could be, but this is a cliché of music from the classicism, which to prepare a dominant, the composer adds a 6th or a 4th or both, and then to avoid reaching the dominant right now. And during these very few moments where the dominant sounds with the 4th, with each 4th or its 6th, it features the very same notes as the tonic on the second inversion. But you must not understand it as a tonic, as relief, but as a dominant, as a stress, but a little bit disguised. Then you reach full force when the 4th goes to the 3rd and the 6th goes to the 5th. And then after you reach full force of the dominant, it releases to the tonic. That's what really this study is about combining how to phrase, respecting the harmony, so relief, tension, tonic, dominant, tonic, and so on. And the phrasing of the melody that not only features the appoggiaturas, which I told you, but also the very oldest, simplest way to phrase, which is when the melody goes higher, you play louder. When the melody goes lower, you play softer. So. To combine the phrasing of the melody with the phrasing of the harmony. And this is what this music is about. It's not about rest stroke or free stroke or fingerings. It's about melody and harmony together. I hope you have fun. I'm making these videos also in English with the same repertoire that I teach at the intermediate level at the Escola de Música de Brasília. You're welcome to follow us in our journey, and on the video description there will always be some information on how you could navigate with us easier, such as links to complementary material, PDFs, and so on. Please subscribe if you want to receive information on next videos, and also click on the bell to get the notifications. Have fun!